The night was calm in the small town of Maplewood, Ohio. The air carried a slight chill, and the stars above twinkled like tiny diamonds scattered across a black canvas. Emily Carter tightened her sweater as she leaned back on the grassy slope, behind her house. Beside her, Jake Thompson stretched out his arms, pointing at constellations he only half remembered from school. "You sure that's Orion?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow. Her voice was playful but tinged with skepticism. 90% sure, Jake replied with a grin. The other 10% is me winging it. They both laughed softly, their breaths forming faint clouds in the cool evening air. It wasn't often they got to spend time like this, just the two of them, away from work, phones, and the endless noise of daily life. Stargazing had always been something they enjoyed together, a quiet escape from the world below. But tonight, the sky seemed different. Something unusual caught Jake's eye, a cluster of lights moving in a way no airplane or satellite ever could. At first he thought it might be a trick of the light, maybe reflections from distant city buildings, but then the lights began to change patterns, swirling and pulsing rhythmically, almost like they were alive. "Emily," Jake said, his tone shifting from casual to serious. "Do you see that?" Emily followed his gaze and froze. The lights weren't random. They were deliberate, forming shapes before dissolving into new ones. They moved closer, descending slowly toward the ground. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. It wasn't loud enough to hurt their ears, but it resonated deep within their chests, making their hearts beat faster. "What is that?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Jake didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the spectacle unfolding before them. The lights coalesced into a single beam, illuminating a nearby field. Slowly, a sleek object emerged from the glow, a craft unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered, reflecting colors that seemed to shift depending on how you looked at it. There were no visible windows or seams, just smooth, seamless curves that defied logic. For a moment, neither of them moved. Fear gripped them, rooting them to the spot. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not now. Aliens belonged in movies and conspiracy theories, not in their quiet little corner of Ohio. Yet there it was, undeniable and real. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "We should go. Like right now." But Emily shook her head. "No. What if it's important? What if they're trying to talk to us? Or what if they're here to abduct us and probe our brains?" Jake shot back, though his tone lacked conviction. Deep down he felt the same pull of curiosity Emily did. Whatever this was, it wasn't hostile. At least, not yet. Before either of them could decide what to do next, the craft opened. Not with a door or hatch, but as if the metal itself melted away, revealing an opening large enough for someone or something to step through. And then it came. The figure was tall, taller than any human, with skin that shimmered like liquid crystal. Its body seemed to emit a soft glow, casting faint shadows on the ground around it. Its eyes were wide and luminous, glowing with an inner light that made direct contact impossible. It didn't speak, at least not with words. Instead, a sound filled their minds, a series of melodic tones that resonated like music. Emily gasped, clutching Jake's arm instinctively. "It's talking to us." "I know," Jake muttered, his voice barely audible. "And I don't think it's asking for directions." The being stepped closer, its movements graceful and deliberate. It stopped a few feet away, tilting its head as if studying them. Then the hum in their minds grew stronger, taking shape into thoughts rather than sounds. Images flashed in their consciousness, pictures of Earth from space, ancient civilizations building pyramids, cities rising from the ground, and people telling stories around fires. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. Somehow, they understood the message. This creature, and others like it, had been watching humanity for a very long time. They saw humans not as primitive or insignificant, but as fascinating, complicated beings capable of creating beauty and destruction in equal measure. You've been observing us? Emily managed to ask aloud, her voice shaky. The being nodded, or at least it gave the impression of nodding. More images flooded their minds. Aliens gathered around glowing orbs, listening intently as tales of humanity unfolded. Stories of courage, love, betrayal, and survival, all told in vivid detail. To these creatures, humans weren't just another species. They were storytellers whose narratives inspired awe across the galaxy. Jake swallowed hard, trying to process everything. So, we're basically bedtime stories for you guys? The being tilted its head again, and a new wave of understanding washed over them. Yes, humans were indeed the subject of countless tales among the stars. But not all of those tales were positive. Some spoke of humanity's capacity for cruelty, greed, and conflict. Others warned of the dangers posed by such unpredictability. We're not all bad, Emily said quickly, feeling the need to defend her species. We can be kind, creative, hopeful. The being paused as if considering her words. Then it extended a hand, or what passed for a hand, toward them. The gesture was clear. Come with me. Jake hesitated, glancing at Emily. This feels like the part in every sci-fi movie where the characters make the worst decision of their lives. And yet, Emily trailed off, staring at the glowing figure. She felt drawn to it, compelled by a mix of fear and wonder. If they refused, would they regret it forever? Would they miss their chance to understand, and maybe even help, their own place in the universe? Taking a deep breath, Emily reached out and took a step forward. Jake followed reluctantly, muttering under his breath. As they approached the alien, the hum in their minds intensified, filling them with a sense of purpose they couldn't quite explain. When they crossed the threshold into the craft, the world outside disappeared. The interior was vast and otherworldly, with walls that seemed to pulse with energy. Strange symbols floated in the air, shifting and rearranging themselves like living puzzles. The being led them to a platform in the center of the room, where holographic projections sprang to life. Through these images, they learned more about the aliens' civilization, an advanced society that valued knowledge and creativity above all else. They also learned of divisions among the stars, factions that viewed humanity with suspicion rather than admiration. The stakes became clearer with each passing moment. Humanity's future depended on proving it could rise above its darker instincts. As the ship lifted off silently into the night sky, Emily and Jake exchanged nervous glances. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. They were no longer just spectators in the story of their species. Whether they liked it or not, they were now players in a cosmic drama that would shape the destiny of worlds. Inside the alien craft, Emily and Jake felt both awestruck and uneasy. The walls shimmered with colors that shifted like liquid rainbows, and the air carried a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through their bones. They followed Valeth, the name they'd come to associate with the tall, glowing figure who had brought them aboard, to a large chamber filled with floating symbols and holographic displays. These projections showed scenes from Earth, ancient rituals, bustling cities, and quiet moments of human connection. It was as though the aliens had been collecting snapshots of humanity's history for centuries. Valeth turned to face them, its luminous eyes fixed on theirs. Once again, the melodic tones filled their minds, translating into thoughts rather than words. You are here because your kind fascinates us, it said. Your stories have shaped our understanding of existence. Emily tilted her head, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. Our stories? Jake chimed in, his voice tinged with disbelief. You mean, like fairy tales? Movies? Stuff we made up? Valeth nodded, or at least gave the impression of nodding. Images began to appear around them. Children gathered around campfires, elders recounting myths, authors scribbling furiously in dimly lit rooms. Then came depictions of aliens sitting in circles, listening intently to these same tales, their expressions wrapped with wonder. Yes, Valeth replied mentally. Your creativity inspires us. Your ability to imagine worlds beyond your own is rare among species, but not all see this as a gift. The tone of the message shifted, growing heavier. New images replaced the old ones, scenes of war, pollution, and suffering. Humans arguing, fighting, destroying. Aliens watching with concern etched across their faces. Some whispered among themselves, shaking their heads. Others looked angry, even fearful. There are those who believe your potential for harm outweighs your capacity for good, Valeth continued. They fear what you might become if left unchecked. Emily frowned, her heart sinking. She wanted to argue, to defend humanity, but she couldn't deny the truth in what Valeth was showing them. Humanity had done terrible things, but it had also created beauty, solved problems, and dreamed impossible dreams. What do they want to do about it? Jake asked, his voice tight with tension. Valeth hesitated before responding. More images appeared. Debates among alien leaders, arguments over Earth's future. Some advocated for isolation, cutting off contact entirely. Others suggested intervention, guiding humanity toward peace, or controlling it if necessary. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she realized how close the situation was to spiraling out of control. You must choose, Valeth said finally. Return to your world and warn your people of the dangers ahead, or stay with us and help. Bridge the divide between our species. The weight of the decision pressed down on them. Neither option felt safe. If they went back, would anyone believe them? Would governments take action, or dismiss their story as nonsense? And if they stayed, could they really make a difference against forces far greater than themselves? Jake glanced at Emily, his brow furrowed. What do you think? Emily hesitated, staring at the holograms swirling around them. She thought of her family, her friends, everyone back home who had no idea what was happening light years away. Could she abandon them when they needed her most? But then she thought of the aliens' faces, their curiosity mixed with apprehension. If she didn't try to help, who would? We have to stay, she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. If there's even a chance we can change their minds, we have to take it. Jake sighed but nodded. All right, let's do this. Valeth extended a hand, or something resembling a hand, and gestured for them to follow. They moved deeper into the ship, passing through corridors lined with more holograms. Each one told a different story. Humans exploring space, curing diseases, creating art. Others depicted darker moments, wars, famines, environmental disasters. Together, they painted a complex picture of a species capable of both greatness and destruction. Eventually, they arrived at another chamber, larger than the first. Inside, a group of aliens stood in a circle, their forms varying in size and shape. Some were tall and slender like Valeth. Others were shorter, with bodies covered in intricate patterns. All of them turned to look at Emily and Jake as they entered. This is the Council, Valeth explained. They represent many worlds and perspectives. Their decisions will shape the future of your planet. One of the aliens stepped forward, its body shimmering with hues of blue and silver. Its voice echoed in their minds, sharp and commanding. Why should we trust you? Why should we believe your kind deserves a place among the stars? Emily swallowed hard, stepping forward despite the knot in her stomach. Because we're still learning, she said, her voice steady now. We've made mistakes. We'll probably keep making them, but we're trying. We dream of better futures, not just for ourselves but for everyone. Isn't that worth something? The council members exchanged glances, some nodding thoughtfully while others remained skeptical. Another alien spoke, its tone softer, but no, less serious. Dreams are powerful, yes, but actions speak louder. What proof do you offer that your dreams will lead to change? Jake stepped up beside Emily, his fists clenched at his sides. Proof? You want proof? Look at where we came from. A few hundred years ago, we didn't even know germs existed. Now we're sending probes to other planets. Give us time and we'll show you what we're capable of. The room fell silent as the council considered their words. Finally, one of the taller aliens raised a hand, signaling for attention. Time may be a luxury none of us can afford. There are factions within our ranks who believe waiting is too risky. They seek to act now, to ensure humanity never poses a threat. A cold wave of dread washed over Emily and Jake. They hadn't anticipated this level of urgency or division. Before they could respond, Valeth interjected, its voice calm but firm. Acting without understanding is reckless. These two represent hope, not fear. Let them prove their worth. The council murmured among themselves before agreeing to give Emily and Jake a chance. Over the next several days, or what felt like days, they worked tirelessly to learn about the various alien cultures represented in the council. They listened to stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen, of alliances forged and broken. In return, they shared tales of Earth's triumphs and struggles, emphasizing the resilience and ingenuity that defined humanity. Through it all, Emily and Jake grew closer to Valeth, who acted as both guide and ally. They learned that not all aliens viewed humans negatively. Some admired their adaptability and passion. Others remained wary, convinced that humanity's flaws outweighed its virtues. As tensions mounted, Emily and Jake realized they weren't just fighting for Earth's survival. They were fighting for its soul. If they failed, humanity risked being cast aside as a cautionary tale. But if they succeeded, they might inspire an entire galaxy to see the best in themselves and each other. By the end of their time aboard the ship, Emily and Jake had gained valuable allies, including several key members of the council. Yet they also knew the battle was far from over. Somewhere out there, forces were gathering, determined to silence humanity before it could grow any stronger. When the moment came to leave, Emily and Jake stood alongside Valeth, gazing out at the stars. "We'll do everything we can to protect our people," Emily promised, "but we can't do it alone." Valeth placed a translucent hand on her shoulder, its touch surprisingly warm. "Then let us stand together. For all our differences, we share one truth. The universe is vast, and none of us are truly alone." With that, the ship descended back toward Earth, carrying two unlikely ambassadors and the fragile hope of a brighter future. When Emily and Jake returned to Earth, they found the world in chaos. Strange reports had spread across the globe, people claiming to see shadowy figures in their dreams, whispering warnings of doom. These visions weren't random. They felt personal, as if the shadows knew each person's deepest fears. Scientists scrambled to explain the phenomenon, but no one could agree on a cause. Some blamed stress or mass hysteria. Others whispered about extraterrestrial interference. Emily and Jake knew better. The moment they stepped off Valeth's ship, they felt it. A faint vibration in the air, like an echo of something unnatural. They didn't waste time unpacking what had happened during their absence. Instead, they headed straight to Dr. Laura Bennett, a retired astrophysicist who had spent decades studying the possibility of alien life. She lived alone in a modest house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by books and telescopes. Dr. Bennett listened intently as Emily and Jake recounted their journey, the council meeting, the debates, and the warning about factions planning to act against Earth. Her expression grew darker with each detail. When they finished, she leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "This is worse than I thought," she said finally. "If rogue aliens are using human minds as weapons, we're dealing with something far beyond our understanding." Jake frowned. "You mean they're inside people's heads?" "Not exactly," Dr. Bennett replied, "but close enough. Think of it like hacking, only instead of computers, they're targeting consciousness. If they can manipulate dreams, they can spread fear faster than any virus." Emily shivered at the thought. "How do we stop them?" Dr. Bennett hesitated before answering. "First, we need proof. Without hard evidence, no one will believe us. Second, we need to find where this is coming from. Somewhere out there, someone or something is pulling the strings." The trio spent hours poring over data, searching for patterns in the reports, flooding news outlets. Slowly, a trail emerged. The shadowy figures appeared most frequently near remote areas. Deserts, mountains, and icy wastelands. One location stood out, an isolated research facility buried beneath the Arctic ice. "It's too perfect," Jake muttered, staring at the map. "Why would anyone build a lab way up there unless they wanted to stay hidden?" Dr. Bennett nodded, grimly. "Exactly, and if I'm right, that's where they're conducting their experiments." Without hesitation, Emily and Jake volunteered to investigate. Dr. Bennett tried to talk them out of it, arguing that they were walking into danger blind. But Emily insisted. "We've seen what's at stake," she said firmly. "If we don't do something, who will?" Reluctantly, Dr. Bennett agreed to help. She provided them with basic gear, thermal suits, flashlights, and a handheld device designed to detect electromagnetic anomalies. Armed with little more than determination, they boarded a small plane bound for the Arctic. The flight was long and grueling, the landscape below growing colder and bleaker with every passing mile. By the time they landed, snow whipped through, the air like a living thing, stinging their faces and obscuring their vision. Guided by GPS coordinates Dr. Bennett had given them, they trudged toward the facility, their breaths visible in the freezing air. The entrance was concealed beneath a thick layer of ice and snow. Using tools from their pack, they cleared away, enough debris to reveal a heavy metal door. A keypad glowed faintly beside it, its buttons covered in frost. Jake glanced at Emily. "Any ideas?" Emily studied the keypad, then pulled out a small gadget Dr. Bennett had called a decoder. She attached it to the panel and waited while it worked. After several tense minutes, the door hissed open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Inside, the air was frigid but dry, carrying a sterile metallic smell. The walls were lined with pipes and wires humming softly with energy. As they moved deeper into the facility, they began to notice signs of activity. Empty food wrappers, discarded lab coats, and scattered notes written in languages they didn't recognize. Then they heard voices. Pressing themselves against the wall, Emily and Jake peeked around a corner. Two figures stood in a brightly lit room, their backs turned. One wore a white coat, the other a sleek black uniform. Both spoke in hushed tones, their words incomprehensible. On a nearby table lay rows of glowing orbs, pulsating with eerie light. "They're harvesting dreams," Emily whispered, her voice trembling, "turning them into weapons." Jake nodded grimly. "We need to shut this place down now." They crept forward, careful to avoid making noise. The scientists were too focused on their work to notice the intruders slipping past them. Beyond the room, they discovered a series of cryogenic pods arranged in neat rows. Inside each pod lay a human, their faces pale and expressionless. Monitors displayed vital signs, along with streams of data scrolling endlessly. Among the captives, one figure caught Emily's attention, a young girl no older than 10. Her blonde hair fanned out around her head, and her lips twitched as if she were speaking in her sleep. Emily felt a pang of sorrow. Whatever these aliens were doing, they had chosen their victims carefully. This girl wasn't just another test subject. She was special. Before they could act, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, illuminating the corridors. Footsteps echoed in the distance, growing louder with each second. "They know we're here," Jake hissed, grabbing Emily's arm. "We need to move." Working quickly, they freed the captives, starting with the girl. As the cryogenic pods opened, the humans stirred, groggy but alive. Emily helped the girl to her feet, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Lily," the girl murmured, clutching the blanket tightly. Her eyes darted around the room, wide with confusion. "We're getting you out of here," Emily promised. "Just hold on." With the group of freed captives trailing behind them, they retraced their steps toward the exit. Guards appeared, blocking their path, their weapons trained on the escapees. Jake stepped forward, holding up his hands. "We don't want trouble," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Let us leave and no one gets hurt." The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Seizing the moment, Jake lunged forward, knocking one guard's weapon from his hand. Chaos erupted as the others fired blindly, their shots ricocheting off the walls. Emily shielded Lily, guiding her toward safety while Jake fought to keep the guards distracted. Finally, they reached the exit, bursting into the cold Arctic air. Behind them, the facility trembled as explosions rocked its foundation. Dr. Bennett had rigged the decoder to overload the system, buying them precious time to escape. As they raced across the snow-covered terrain, Emily glanced back at the burning structure. For the first time, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. They had stopped the immediate threat, but the larger battle was far from over. Somewhere out there, forces still conspired against humanity, and Emily and Jake were determined to fight back, no matter the cost. The news of the Arctic facility's destruction spread quickly, though not in the way Emily and Jake had hoped. Governments around the world scrambled to piece together what had happened, their explanations ranging from natural disasters to covert military operations. No one mentioned aliens, not publicly at least, but behind closed doors, leaders whispered about strange phenomena and shadowy figures appearing in people's dreams. Panic simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. Emily and Jake knew they couldn't stay quiet. The evidence they had gathered, the glowing orbs, the data streams, the freed captives, was proof that Earth wasn't alone in the universe. More importantly, it showed that some forces out there viewed humanity as a threat. They needed to act fast before fear turned into violence. Their first step was to reach out to Dr. Laura Bennett. She had returned home after helping them escape the Arctic, but she hadn't been idle. Using her network of scientific contacts, she began analyzing the data they'd brought back. Her findings were alarming. The orbs weren't just tools for manipulating dreams. They were devices designed to extract human emotions and amplify them. Fear, anger, despair, all could be harvested and weaponized. Worse still, the technology seemed to rely on a combination of alien engineering and stolen human biology. This isn't just about scaring us, Dr. Bennett explained as she pored over the information. It's about control. Whoever is behind this wants to destabilize Earth to make us look dangerous to other species. Emily clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. So we're being framed? Exactly, Dr. Bennett replied. If the Galactic Council, or whatever you call them, sees Earth as unstable, they'll have no choice but to intervene. And if they don't, others will. Jake leaned forward, his voice sharp. Others meaning the rogue faction, Doctor? Bennett nodded grimly. Yes. And if they succeed, humanity won't stand a chance. The three of them spent days planning their next move. They knew they couldn't trust governments or corporations. Too many agendas were at play. Instead, they decided to go public, but carefully. They reached out to independent journalists, activists, and scientists willing to listen. Slowly, they built a coalition of allies determined to expose the truth. One key member of their growing team was Lily, the young girl they had rescued from the Arctic facility. At first, she seemed fragile, her mind still recovering from the experiments she'd endured. But as time went on, her strength began to shine through. She had an uncanny ability to remember details, snippets of conversations, symbols etched into walls, even fragments of alien languages. Her insights proved invaluable, helping them decode messages embedded in the shadowy visions plaguing Earth. Through Lily's memories, they uncovered a crucial clue, coordinates pointing to a hidden base orbiting a distant moon. This was where the rogue faction operated, far beyond Earth's reach. It was risky, but Emily and Jake knew they had to investigate. With Dr. Bennett's help, they modified Valeth's ship, which had remained cloaked near Earth since their return. The craft wasn't designed for combat, but it was fast and stealthy, a perfect choice for a covert mission. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Bennett pulled them aside. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice steady despite the worry in her eyes. "But promise me one thing. Come back alive. Humanity needs fighters like you now more than ever." Emily nodded, determination hardening her expression. "We'll do whatever it takes." The journey to the rogue base was tense and silent. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. When they finally arrived, the sight took their breath away. The base floated in the void of space, its surface jagged and metallic, covered in spires that glinted like broken glass. ships, patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and mechanical. Using the ship's cloaking technology, Emily and Jake slipped past the defenses undetected. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet, lit by dim, flickering lights. They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Along the way, they discovered labs filled with equipment identical to what they'd seen in the Arctic facility. Rows of pods contained humans in stasis, their minds trapped in endless loops of nightmares. "It's worse than we thought," Jake muttered, his voice barely audible. "They've been doing this for years." Emily felt a surge of anger but forced herself to stay focused. "We need proof, something undeniable." They found what they were looking for in the central chamber, a massive orb suspended in midair, pulsating with dark energy. Surrounding it were holographic displays showing Earth from every angle, its cities, oceans, forests, all marked with red zones indicating areas targeted for destabilization. The images shifted constantly, revealing plans for sabotage, misinformation campaigns, and outright attacks. Jake recorded everything on a handheld device, his hands shaking slightly. "This is it," he whispered. "This proves everything." Before they could leave, alarms blared throughout the base. Guards flooded the corridors, their weapons drawn. Emily and Jake ducked into a nearby room, hearts pounding. Through a crack in the door, they watched as a tall figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't Valeth. It was another alien, its body sleek and angular, its eyes burning with cold fury. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, its voice echoing in their minds. "Your kind has caused enough trouble." Emily stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fear coursing through her. "You don't speak for all of us. There are billions of humans who want peace." The alien tilted its head, studying her. "Peace is a luxury few can afford. Your species is unpredictable, reckless. If left unchecked, you will destroy yourselves and possibly others." "We're trying to change," Jake interjected. "Isn't that worth something? Isn't it worth giving us a chance?" For a moment the alien hesitated. Then it raised a hand, signaling for the guards to lower their weapons. "Perhaps," it said finally, "but convincing the council will not be easy. You must act quickly and decisively." With that, the alien turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving Emily and Jake stunned but hopeful. They made their way back to the ship, the data they'd collected safely stored. As they lifted off, the rogue base receded into the distance, its spires fading into the blackness of space. Back on Earth, they shared their findings with the coalition they'd built. Journalists published exposés, scientists presented irrefutable evidence, and activists organized rallies calling for unity and transparency. Slowly, the tide began to turn. People started questioning the fears that had gripped them, realizing they had been manipulated. But Emily and Jake knew the fight wasn't over. The rogue faction still existed, lurking in the shadows, waiting for another opportunity to strike. For now, though, humanity had a fighting chance. A chance to prove it could rise above its flaws and become something greater. As they stood together under the night sky, watching the stars twinkle above, Emily felt a spark of hope. "We did it," she said softly. "At least for now." Jake smiled, though it was tinged with caution. "Yeah, but we can't stop. Not yet." "No," Emily agreed. "Not yet." Months passed and the world began to change. The evidence Emily and Jake had gathered sparked a global awakening. People demanded answers, not just about the rogue aliens, but about humanity's place in the universe. Governments, once secretive and divided, started working together. Scientists collaborated across borders, sharing knowledge and resources. For the first time in history, Earth felt united, not by fear, but by hope. Emily and Jake became symbols of this newfound unity. They traveled the globe, speaking at conferences, meeting with leaders and connecting with ordinary people who wanted to understand what was happening beyond their skies. Their message was simple. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was capable of growth. "We're not just dreamers," Emily often said during her speeches. "We're builders. We create, we adapt, and we learn from our mistakes." Jake added his own perspective, his tone practical yet inspiring. "Yes, we've made bad choices, But when we come together, we can do incredible things. That's what makes us special, and that's what makes us worth trusting." Their words resonated deeply, especially among younger generations. Children like Lily, who had once been victims of alien experiments, now stood as testaments to resilience. She joined Emily and Jake on their travels, sharing her story with anyone willing to listen. Her courage inspired others to speak out, creating a ripple effect that spread far and wide. Meanwhile, Valith remained a steadfast ally. Though its species still debated humanity's future, it worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between worlds. It introduced Emily and Jake to other alien ambassadors, beings from distant stars who saw potential in humanity despite its flaws. Together, they formed an alliance unlike anything Earth had ever known. But challenges remained. The rogue faction hadn't disappeared. It had gone underground, regrouping and plotting new strategies. Its members believed humanity was too dangerous to coexist peacefully, and they were determined to act before another chance slipped away. Whispers of their plans reached Emily and Jake through intercepted transmissions and coded messages left by sympathetic aliens. One night, as they sat in a quiet room reviewing intelligence reports, Jake sighed heavily. "It feels like we're playing catch-up all the time. Every time we solve one problem, another pops up." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's how progress works. It's messy and frustrating, but we can't give up. If we do, they win." Dr. Laura Bennett, who had joined them for the evening, leaned forward. "The key is staying ahead of them. We need to anticipate their moves, not just react to them." Lily, sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly spoke up. "What if we tell our own stories?" Everyone turned to look at her, surprised by the suggestion. "What do you mean?" Emily asked gently. Lily hesitated, then continued. "They use dreams to scare people. What if we use dreams to inspire them? To show everyone, not just humans but aliens too, that we're more than our fears?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jake grinned. "That's actually brilliant." Over the next few weeks, they put Lily's idea into action. Working with artists, writers, and technologists, they created a series of holographic projections designed to counteract the shadowy visions spreading fear across Earth. These projections depicted humanity's greatest achievements: astronauts landing on the moon, scientists curing diseases, communities coming together after disasters. They also included scenes of everyday life, families laughing, friends helping each other, strangers offering kindness. The project, dubbed Light in the Dark, was launched globally. At first, people were skeptical. How could images compete with nightmares? But slowly the tide began to shift. Wherever the projections appeared, in city squares, rural fields, or even private homes, they brought comfort and clarity. People realized they weren't alone. They were part of something bigger. Even some aliens took notice. Members of the Galactic Council, initially wary of humanity, found themselves moved by the displays. One ambassador, a being with crystalline skin and a voice like wind chimes, approached Emily and Jake after witnessing the projections. "Your stories are powerful," it said. "They remind us of why we admired you in the first place." As support grew, so did resistance. The rogue faction struck back, targeting key locations where the projections were strongest. Power grids failed, communication networks went dark, and chaos erupted in several cities. Emily and Jake knew they couldn't let fear take hold again. With Valith's help, they coordinated a counterattack, not with weapons, but with truth. They broadcast a live message to both Earth and the galaxy, exposing the rogue faction's actions and motives. Using data collected during their mission to the hidden base, they showed undeniable proof of manipulation and deceit. The transmission ended with a plea for cooperation. "We don't have to be enemies," Emily said, her voice steady and clear. "We can choose to work together, for the good of all." The response was overwhelming. Thousands of humans rallied to protect the projection sites, forming human chains around them. Alien allies joined the effort, providing shields and reinforcements. Even some members of the rogue faction began to question their leader's methods. Cracks formed within their ranks, weakening their resolve. In the end, it wasn't force that defeated the rogues. It was unity. Faced with mounting pressure from both sides, their leaders surrendered, agreeing to stand trial before the Galactic Council. The crisis was over, though scars remained. As life on Earth returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be, Emily and Jake reflected on everything they'd been through. They stood on a hill overlooking Maplewood, the town where it all began. The stars above twinkled brightly, endless and full of possibility. "You think we'll ever stop wondering what's out there?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. Emily smiled softly. "I hope not. Wondering is what keeps us moving forward." Behind them, Lily laughed as she chased fireflies, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Dr. Bennett adjusted her glasses, gazing at the sky with quiet satisfaction. And somewhere in the distance Valeth watched, its luminous eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Humanity's story wasn't finished. It was only beginning.